I'm a forestry technician, and my job is to lay out timber sales and to get it all set to go so the logger can log it and Forest Service sells the timber, makes money, everyone's happy. First thing we do is a lot of the work's done in the office or with surveys before I even get here. Soil surveys are done, archaeological surveys, wildlife surveys, rare plant surveys. It's all done the year before. By the time I get here, it should be good to go. There are certain things I need to keep in mind when I'm laying out a timber sale is slope, and that's what I have this for. It's a reloscope, and it can, among other things, it tell me the slope. We can't go over much beyond 35% with it, with ground that's going to be logged by a tractor. Distance from the stream is something I have to be aware of at all times. Different streams get different stream buffers. We're good here. So right now all I'm concerned is with slope and the viability of the timber sale. If you look up here, you see we have a lot of trees we can thin. It's got to be profitable to the logger. So what we're doing here is looking at what's profitable to the logger, what's doable on the ground, meaning not too steep. So then the first thing I do is determine where the boundaries are going to be. And that's just done by hanging up blue flags along the perimeter of the timber sale. Next comes somebody else usually follows behind with the timber sale boundary. Tags. Another person comes behind. There, that's our timber sale boundary. And then if somebody tries to move the tag, the reason why I was so sloppy with paint is it'll leave a mark behind here. It'll be obvious that someone moved the boundary. Then we come through with a GPS. Next job is to GPS the perimeter of the timber sale. The next job is tree selection. Today we're using orange paint. Orange means leave, don't cut. We can use blue, whatever's more efficient. What we're trying to do here is recreate what the stand of trees would look like before fire suppression, maybe 100 years ago. What would the stand look like? What you'd see here is a bunch of pine trees and a few scattered Doug fir. Now, because of fire suppression, the Doug firs come in. Here's the pine, the big one. Doug fir comes around the base, chokes out the big pine trees, kills the pine. So what we want to do is return it to historical levels with historical species composition. That would be mostly pine on drier sites like this. So one thing you'd have to determine is what the site what would be here. You look at the vegetation and we'd know that this is a pine site because of what's growing here. And how much moisture is in the ground, and that would tell us how many trees to leave per acre. I won't go into that because it would take a while, but we know that this pine is the one to leave, so we would come through, mark the pine to leave, and then we would leave that alone, and then the logger knows he can cut that fir, but he has to leave the pine. We also like to leave groups if we can. It kind of mimics the natural characteristics of a stand. So if there's like 2 or 3 pine together, and we'll leave Doug fir sometime if they're really good. Mostly we look at the crown, we look at the insect damage. If there's sawdust around the base of a fir, I don't see it on this one, but that would indicate Doug fir bark beetle. There's defoliators we have to look for. There's root rot that's indicated by a thinning of the crown, or maybe some fungus around the base of the tree. That's all kind of stuff that we look for when we're doing our tree selection. This would be another one we want to leave. We would mark the pine, let the fir die. When we're all done, it would look like a wide open pine stand, which is how this should be. Okay. Reason for selecting against certain trees is dwarf mistletoe. You can see it in this Doug fir here. It's a parasitic plant that infects the trees and will eventually kill them. It's found more in dense stands of trees like this, sort of an unnatural condition that you'd find in nature. So we thin them out and select against mistletoe. This is a lodgepole pine. In this unit we'd mark this one orange for a leaf tree. Normally it's not thought of as a long-lived tree because it usually grows in dense stands, and when there's a fire it burns up. But if in a stand like this where spruce budworm is defoliating the fir, and there's dwarf mistletoe, this would be a good candidate to leave. We just got to make sure not to do a ground fire through here when we're burning the slash. I'm pretty sure this unit is going to be machine piled, so this tree should do fine.
Fir! 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 Fir!
The trees are called out either by species and then put into a data recorder which randomly chooses whether we cruise it or not. And we'll demonstrate cruising here. He's walking through the woods, choosing the trees without the orange paint. They've already been picked ahead of time. So now it's just a matter of marking, putting blue paint on each tree that's called, calling out the species, and then occasionally we'll measure one, which is called cruising. This stand here is especially opened up because of the aspen. It's to, if we remove 90% of the conifers, the aspen will come in thicker.
Three fir! Three fir! Fir! Cruise it! What number? 1!
Okay, cruising a tree is just measuring how much board feet is in a tree. It's pretty simple. We just get the diameter measured at 4.5 feet, which is 11.6 inches. And then we get the height, and that's measured in with our reloscope, the tool you've already seen. Got to write this down before I forget. Height, we go out 50, 100, 66, 33, any multiple of 66 or 100, you get height. Then we look at the shape of the tree and measure any defect we might have in it because of fork, crook, sweep, disease, things like that. Look at the bottom, the top. We record that amount, and we'll defect it just a small amount for a little bit of sweep right here, so I'll give it a 5% deduction. And that's it. On certain species, we'll measure the amount of taper it has. That's called form class. That's a little more involved, but it's using this reloscope. Once again, the one tool for everything.